The mission was to take photos of the moon. I was 25 years old when I came to JPL. I told them I didn't know how to build a spacecraft, and they said no one else does either. We've never built one. As I walked into the building and saw it sitting there, I thought, I just couldn't believe it. Like, this thing is going to the moon.
It was a very exciting time in JPL's history. The early 60s was really the very embryonic stage of the whole space business, and they were really breaking new ground during that period of time. In 1960, I accepted a position, and my first job was to work on the Ranger spacecraft to the moon, which was a precursor to the Apollo. Bob was fortunate enough to come here just at that time. Ranger Spacecraft had quite a history, and he was a big part of that history. And as Apollo was going to the moon, obviously they needed, but they're going to be landing men there. They would need to know a lot more about it. There was great disbelief that we were actually considering going to the moon. And people said, "You really aren't, are you?" And the answer was, "Well, we think we are. We're going to try." Yeah. It was a real experience working on a national goal, and we recognized that.
So the Ranger spacecraft launched on an Atlas Agena launch vehicle and flew out to the moon and crashed into the moon, but that's what was planned. The spacecraft was doing 4,000 plus miles an hour, or about 15 minutes out from the moon. We would switch on 6 cameras. We took 4,300 plus pictures. The last photo that it took before it impacted gave a great high-resolution view of what the surface of the moon looked like. The last picture, the smallest crater was about 18 inches in diameter, so we had good resolution. And that's important because at that point, we had to design the landing gear for the lunar module. We didn't know what the moon was made of, and this was the first time we'd ever gone there and taken pictures, so it was essential. I worked on Ranger 7, the first one that worked. And we sat down and cried when it worked. And
after the successes of Ranger 7, 8, and 9, JPL moved on to bigger things, reaching further out into the cosmos. Hundreds of leftover pieces of flight hardware, test articles, and spare parts from Ranger were donated to the Smithsonian Institute and put into storage. 50 years later, the California Science Center acquired these artifacts with the goal of sharing the first piece of American hardware that ever touched the moon.
And he said, yeah, as a matter of fact, we received all this great stuff from the Smithsonian for Ranger Spacecraft, but it's in all kinds of crates and boxes and so forth, and guess what? It didn't come with instructions on how to put it together. Can you help me? So I said, well, I probably can't help directly, but I said I can probably find some people who can.
It was predicated on the Science Museum putting together a team that the Smithsonian and everyone felt like it would be something that could be done and done right.
One thing led to another, and we're on the phone with Bob.
And asked me if I thought I could do it, and I said I thought I could build it in my sleep. I had worked on it so many hours. After I hung up, I realized it was 50 years ago.
I could put them together in my sleep was a quote from him we have reminded him of many times.
So were you able to build it in your sleep? What was it like?
Probably that's the way we've built this, is mostly in my sleep, yes. Yeah.
One thing led to another, and the next thing we knew, we were down here at the Science Center opening some of those crates and boxes and realizing that it was going to be quite an endeavor. In many cases, there were duplicates of some of the units. In many cases, there were missing units. Some of the things we had to fabricate ourselves, and some of the things we just had to bolt together. But it's been a great experience.
And we have worked with some really wonderful volunteers here who are excited, even though they may not have been experienced in building spacecraft. Their willingness far outweighed their experience.
When I was asked to be a part of the Ranger program, I was thrilled and speechless. It's been a priceless learning experience. There's nothing like getting a hands-on view of what it really was. A lot of this is real flight hardware. This stuff could have ended up on the moon. Decades from now, I can bring family and friends to the Science Center and point at this thing and say, I helped, I worked on that.
This Ranger spacecraft will remain on display at the California Science Center as a reminder of this essential link between man's terrestrial existence and our first steps into the ocean of space.